Thank you, everybody. Good, nice to see everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm Barry Noman. I work with the eMAM group. We put together a really great list of speakers for tonight. A little bit of a cross-section so we can cover a lot of different things. I just want to make some acknowledgments first when we start. I'll explain who everybody is, and then we'll bring them up one at a time, and we'll move right through the program. Jim Hardy, who I just called, who's on his way down there, he's in the back, hugging his guests. So I've known Jim for over 40 years. We started in the industry together. He is the co-founder and CEO here of Illuminate Hollywood. We have found at least 6 tonight who said, you know, I've driven by that place for years and I never knew what was inside. So, you know a little bit about it. He's got full post facilities here. There's 2 stages, control rooms. I'm biased, but I'll tell you in all honesty, amongst the nicest people you'll work with integrity and honesty. There is no bad words about Jim. And you can ask around with everybody. If somebody ever said something that was ill about Jim, you can probably find them like with a rap sheet. So, and I will tell you, his team and his staff are every bit as cooperative, the same thing. Everything comes with a smile. How can I help you? Let me get it done. This is all from his people do this, and they don't get paid anything extra. They just help us out to hold some of these meetings. So if you get a chance, you want to meet Jim's in the back there, glasses in the dark suit, he's happy to meet you, and I think you'd be well served. He's got the stages, he's got full post facilities here. Our first speaker after Jim will be Jim DeFilippis. Jim wears an assortment of hats. Many of you knew him from his years at Fox. I asked Jim to join in tonight for a couple of reasons that way. Always been the smart guy in the room. He's my 911 when I don't know what to do, and it's always worked. A lot of people talked about remote, especially during the early days of COVID, and I used to say, call Jim DeFilippis, because he did things like the Olympics, and they were never around town. They were in Italy, and they were around the other side of the globe in different time zones. So he knows how to put all that together, and he can help you with stuff out that way. He'll also talk a little bit about AI, I believe. And it's not so simple and not so inexpensive, and there's some savings and benefits, but he'll go through some of that. After him is Chuck Bulow from eMAM, who's standing out in the back, and they'll go through the asset management platform with you. Chuck is Vice President of Business Development. Next after that will be from LucidLink, Dave Leopold, who's the sales director, who they were actually one of the first people that joined in when we were looking for people to help us put on tonight's show, along with Scott Miller, who stepped up early on. So I want to thank both of them. Tom Arnold from SpectraLogic also was an early adopter to help us that way. I'm looking, where are you? Oh, yeah, right in front of you. So, we'll have a presentation from SpectraLogic. Tom Burns is CTO for Media and Entertainment for Dell Technologies. I don't know where, there he is, okay. And so he'll be there, and then followed at the end by Mark Zorn, who is probably not unfamiliar to most of you from the SMPTE side, but also from the Marvell side. So anyway, thank you again for coming. It's just an open room, open night. That's why we try to use the stage. It's roomy, it's not squashed or anything. There's plenty of food. There's actually reserved food if there's more, if you get hungry. All the drinks out there are there. The restrooms are straight as you came in. As you go back out, the men's will be on the right, and the women's just be around the other side. So without the other problems or anything that way, I'll turn it over to Jim. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. You can hear me, right? So Barry called me up and he said, I got this little thing, and can you talk a few minutes about remote workflow and cloud and a whole bunch of things. So I ruminated for about 10 minutes, and I've kind of put together a little bit of slides, not too deep, just sort of give you some really my thoughts off the top of my head. And at the end, I have a little special treat based on AI. At least I think it's a treat. So anyway, as Barry said, I was with Fox for 15 years or so, but I also had worked at Olympics, about 6 different Olympics. I was head of engineering down in Atlanta for the '96 Olympics. I also did a lot of work on high definition TV. There were 6 proponent systems, and I was part of the facility that actually ran the testing of those different systems. And then prior to that, I was with ABC Television in New York. So the first topic is remote workflows. Some background and history. First time I sort of, ran into that was in '96. NBC had built a huge project out of 30 Rock called Project Genesis. And they wanted to leverage that they just put in all this new SDI equipment, and they didn't want to have to rip it out and bring it down to Atlanta. So they got upwards of, I forget how many 45 megabit circuits between Atlanta and New York. And so they offloaded a lot of editing and graphics production. That saved them a ton of money. They didn't have to travel, house, feed them, and get maximum utility out of what they had just put into 30 Rock. In 2008 in Turin, I was involved with the host broadcaster and a little company from Belgium called EVS that some may know about. They had an idea of networking using SDI as a backbone because it's fast and efficient and it's synchronous. It's unlike TCP/IP. But they realized that in order to make it desktop available and make it remote available, they had to build an IP layer on top of that. So that was a birthing that I helped them do there, and it was a little painful, but eventually it worked. And NBC used a lot of it to do their secondary feeds on the internet, which was just in its nascent point. It was all VOD assets, not really live streaming. In 2008, NBC definitely did more of this at-home, what they called at-home workflows. And again, the challenge there is you're, something like 10,000 miles away, many time zones. But now we have undersea fiber. We can get gigabits and terabits across the Pacific and domestically, so they continue that tradition. We zoom ahead to London. There, the host broadcaster is distributing live IP streams of all the events worldwide. So many broadcasters, they can't send everybody they want. They'll send a few people, but they'll want to have the complete coverage of the Olympics in their home country. And at the same time, the Pac-12 network here domestically is launched, and they, from the get-go, did remote production. Studios and facilities in the Bay Area with campus locations for all the stadiums. Mainly their primary sports, although they promise to cover all what they call Olympic sports. It's men's basketball and football. The interesting part is they use something called Internet 2 for the transport. That's a form of the internet that's restricted to educational institutes that the government funded. So thanks to the government, they got sort of a free ride and had all the bandwidth they wanted. Finally, and for me, for 2014, the Olympics in Sochi, Russia, there we upped the game again. We not only had remote production, we had remote distribution. So I would sit at a console in Sochi, Russia, and I can see worldwide feeds going out. Now, I say that with a little bit of humility because we had to work around rights issues. So it was the Winter Games in the Mideast, the Caribbean, parts of Asia, not the big ones like China and Japan and Korea, but interestingly enough, Finland. And it was very exciting to me because you could see, it was the first time you could actually see your audience. I could monitor the Akamai dashboard, and I can see how the audience grew. And what was really fascinating is the audience never died. There was always somebody, because what would happen is you'd have a live event and it would be recorded. And then it was available as a VOD asset. So people were looking at that, and after the event, they wanted to check it out. So it never went to zero. The thing that almost broke the internet in the mobile networks in Finland was what I would call the Super Bowl of international hockey. It was a grudge match between the Russians and the Finns. And anyone who knows the history of that area, it was literally a blood match. And I'm watching the Akamai meter go up and up and up, and typically would get about 4,000 to 5,000 views. This thing blew through that within the first couple of minutes, but we then kind of threshold of just under 25,000 views. So I wondered about that, and the next day the Finns won, by the way, crushed the Russians, knocked them out of the finals. The Finns came in handing out pins and very happy that they won their game. And I asked one of them, I said, well, it's interesting, I was watching the viewership. I said, was anybody watching anything else on television? He says, no, any television that was turned on in Finland was at that game. I said, well, it's interesting, we only topped out at about 25,000. Oh, well, our government got on all the airwaves to tell everyone to stop streaming on their mobile phones because it was crushing their networks. So success can be its own devil. So it's something to keep in mind. Also in 2014, ESPN, for the Brazilian World Cup, they developed something, and it's become a term of art now, REMI, for remote integration model. So again, concept is minimal footprint at the remote location, bring all the camera signals and audio signals back to a central place and produce. And of course, during the worldwide pandemic, even though things were shut down, there still were events happening around the world that were covered, and REMI was, the REMI approach, and even beyond that was in process. So again, today we see many models of this and different solutions. It also incorporates 5G in the sense that we have camera systems now with camera backs that are wireless connectivity to 5G networks and can take gigabits in. So you don't even really have to wire up the cable, the camera anymore. No trailing cable. So that's quite amazing. So the motivations really, availability of resource in a central location is very, very important. Plus you can build up an expertise. You're not scrambling to find freelancers, which is not easy to find, at least in the sports world. And you get most utilization. You've invested in this equipment. You want to use it as much as you can. Again, a cadre of skilled workers in one location. Obvious time and cost savings. You're not transporting people and equipment, and you don't have to house them and feed them and all that. You need IP technology to enable the streaming services. So you sort of have a leg up on that. You're not converting from one form to another. You're all in IP. And in fact, I think for a lot of the streaming services that are doing live right now, they never really go back to a central site, which is the second part of what I'm going to talk about is cloud-based operations. So again, the key technology is you need availability of wide data infrastructures that are affordable, mainly fiber, some sort of cloud-based storage and processing, at least to transition from one site to another, and diversify. IP streaming, of course. And then I mentioned 4G, 5G, and now 6G on the horizon, providing wireless remote capture. So you put that all together. What is the cloud? Okay, I'm attempting to define something which is kind of nebulous, not to make a pun, but it's a compute resource that's made up of a set of interconnected servers and storage at a variety of sites. And it's not dissimilar, if those of us that have gray hair like me will remember timeshare systems where you would have a terminal and you'd get connected through telephone lines to a mainframe computer, and you get fractions of a microsecond in terms of processing time to do whatever you needed to do. So it's not asimilar to that. You organize your cloud, you get servers, and you're charged for the time that you're used and the storage you use. But the cloud can be remote or it could be local. You could have local instances of stuff. It opens up the idea that project operations can be geographically diverse. You don't all have to be in the same place at the same time. You do need a common framework of services available. So, AWS is one example of that, but there are others. The unique thing is you're trading off capital expenditure versus operating expenditure. So you're not having to front millions of dollars to buy the equipment. You basically are paying for time to spin up these servers and storage. It's also fast to spin it up, and also just as fast to spin down. Some of the challenges with that, before we get into streaming, is of course availability of those resources, and then how well does it scale. A little talk about streaming video. When you're using remote production, and if you're using an IP infrastructure, you already have the base stock of what you need for streaming. So that's a big advantage, especially in terms of time. You probably heard about latency of streaming. Well, if I've got to bring it all the way back into a central facility, operate on it, manipulate it, and then send it back out, that just delays things further. You can increase the level of production for live streaming without necessarily a major increase in production costs. And the other interesting thing, and again, I worked with some partners on a proposal for a large sports league, is one of our key things was that media, if I'm storing it in a cloud, it's now available to multiple partners, including, it could be B2B, it could also be B2C. So if I want to follow my favorite athlete and I want to see all the clips of this athlete in the last month, it's all available on the cloud. So I could build applications to let them access that. And finally, worldwide distribution, which again I'm familiar with from the Olympics, and with a common production platform. So the third component I wanted to talk about was AI, because that seems to be a buzzword and everything. You can't order an ice cream cone without talking about AI. So what is it, and where are we going with it? It seems to be everywhere now. And it has been for a while embedded in a lot of applications and workflows. Some people know it as natural learning systems or neural networks or machine learning, usually used for lower level kind of routine or rudimentary tasks. So we're already, parts of where we're using it today are in color transformation, say going from wide color, transforming stuff from wide color and HDR, editing, organizing clips and searching clips, optimization of video and audio. That's a big study area now, and there are some encodings using it. Generation of subtitles and closed captioning. I think we've all experienced in Zoom where you can actually have it do live captioning, and that's an AI engine behind the scenes. The latest thing, of course, is generative AI, ChatGPT being one example of that. And there may be uses in getting more in the creative space, such as virtual announcers. There was an experiment at a tennis match where they were covering there's usually like 20 or 30 courts where, there are sub-matches going on, and they don't want to necessarily have to pay an announcer to be there. So they use a virtual announcer. I can tell you it wasn't very interesting, but they tried it. The idea of actually doing a rough cut, pre-selecting clips in a basic editing package, and that's been tried. I think Watson put together a trailer, right? That I think we saw in a couple of HPAs ago. Again, I think organizing of archived materials and authoring metadata. Metadata is this bugaboo that we'd really like to have all the metadata, but who's going to generate it? Well, maybe we can train up AI to do that. True color conversions or colorization, Ted Turner will live on and be vilified. Special effects, also being able to generate different kinds of backgrounds. Of course, there's AI used to generate when you want a huge crowd of people and you don't want to pay all the extras. You get a few samples and you generate it from there, and generated backgrounds as well. So I thought I should, if I'm going to talk about AI, I think I should try to do something with it. So I went in and I got on ChatGPT and I was asking them questions mainly about what they thought about AI and where it would be best used and everything else. But then I got a little crazy. Maybe I had one too many glasses of wine, and I thought it would be interesting to try to see how creative I could be. So first thing I did is I asked it to generate a poem about AI. And that was kind of interesting, but I'm not much of a poet. And then I said, well, maybe it's a lot harder. Why don't you try a haiku? And it came through with a haiku. And then I probably had one too many glasses, and I said, all right, let's try a rap song. So I'm going to bring this over closer, and I'm going to see if this works. So this is a rap song. Whoops. Sorry. This is a rap song for some reason. Oh, here we go.
Yo, I'm your virtual assistant, air sensation in the digital realm. I'm causing elation from Siri to Alexa. I'm the rhyme creator, got the algorithm sharp like a lightsaber. Virtual assistant, spitting lines so persistent in the cybernetic space. I'm always consistent. Ask me anything, I got the cognition. Rapping through circuits is my mission. So if you need help or just a rhyme, call on me anytime. It's our time. Virtual assistant in the digital groove, rapping through circuits, macking moves.
Okay, so I can see we're not going to get a gold record on that one. So in summary, wrapping it up, roam production is in wide use, enabled by things like fiber, 5G, and cloud services. Streaming is becoming the dominant mode of distribution of content, both VOD and live. AI is part of the workflow, reducing our needs for humans, which has got its good and bad sides. And it will expand and improve. I think the jury's out on whether it goes into, how far it goes into the creative space. So I thank you for your attention.
Before I leave, any questions for Jim? There you go.
Yes, young fellow.
So, remote production, if you're doing replays or doing graphics and doing overlays, in some of these situations, what kind of latency did they get if they were 2,000 miles away to incorporate into a live stream that's coming from the venue?
Well, again, if you're usually generating the graphics, you're presetting them. And then the live graphics insertion is maybe done there. The question is, can you do it all in the cloud? And the answer is, yeah. Imagine and others have put master controls up in the cloud. And then everything is equally delayed. So you're going to have a latency, but as long as you're managing that time difference, you're going to be okay.
So the way that people are doing it now is capturing audio and video in streams from a venue, feeding
Right.
it to some remote place, which is then integrating
Yep.
all those streams. So
Yep.
graphics, overlay, replay,
Right.
it's all happening at this place with the same latency of all cameras coming.
Correct.
Cameras and audio.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Young fellow.
The London Olympics was stereoscopic.
Yes, I was there.
Can you share the positives and negatives on that?
The positive is we survived. What I learned from that is stereoscopic is very challenging. I happen to have worked with this crazy Spaniard who had been working on stereoscopic for like 10 years, mainly artistically. He was a computer scientist major originally, but he got into doing film, and they just, in desperation, hired him. And he would look at a monitor and go, I would look at it and go, there's something wrong, but I couldn't tell you what it was. He'd look at it and he'd diagnose it in a second, and he'd give me the 3 things that were wrong about it. So there's a lot more you have to worry about if you're going to do 3D. And then the question is, once you can get it correct, does it add any value? And the general case is, yes, it can, but it's a challenge, and it's not, again, live, you're never quite sure where you're going with it, and you need to really script 3D. You can't just do it on the fly.
I know I have multiple discs of that Olympics in 3D, and it is gorgeous. The sports are boring, but the 3D is gorgeous.
Yeah, well, we didn't always get the prime place either, so. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thanks, Barry. Thanks for the opportunity.
So that's just Chuck Yellow from eMAM.
Right. I think I'm gonna have enough space for this, but we'll see. There we go. And I'm hoping that's there.
It'll be there in a sec.
And it's there.
There you go.
All right.
Thank you.
So We are eMAM. We're a New York-based company. We've been in existence for about 17 years now, and with offices worldwide. So we are a media asset management system. What does that mean today? I mean, it's different meanings to anybody, you know, with different types of media and so on. What we do is we manage all types of media. So it could be RED files, 4K files, 8K, 10K, whatever K files, you know, you've got these days. And all types of other types of media, so graphics, animations, DPX files, doesn't really matter for us. So what we are all about is bringing that together to allow people to actually find the content, use the content, edit the content, and distribute, and of course archive the content. So this slide really kind of tells you what we do. So acquisition-wise, we'll talk about live and file-based transcoding API as well. We organize the content. At this point, this is where we kind of set the permission levels. So who gets to see what they get assigned to, who gets to have access to the media, what they can do with the media, what metadata they can see with the media, and so on, and then move on from there. So you can assign groups and various things and what they can do with the media. Creative side, on the Adobe side, with Final Cut, as well as DaVinci Resolve, we have panels and extensions to look into that. So editors typically are looking into the MAM through a panel and accessing the content. Avid is a bit different, where we have to actually share that content through a third-party system. So it's pretty typical. They don't have a panel as yet. Somebody keeps telling me they're working on it, but I've been waiting for 20 years. So we're waiting on that to see how that goes. Collaboration-wise, so being able to share the content with internal, external folks, setting different permission levels and what they can see and again do with that media, deliver the content. MAMs typically will use like a third-party transcoder. So those could be from a TEM to Drastic to Capella to all these types. MOG systems is one we're working on today if you're familiar with MOG systems. Drastic Technologies up in Canada as well. So typically we'll use that to create the MES and the proxies for editors to use and then preview and so on and share the media. And then of course archive, SpectraLogic, and then being able to share all the content but put it off onto archive systems. We also store to spinning disk, so our folks at Dell and friends at Dell with their storage, we obviously share it there. Wasabi, I know the guys from Wasabi are here in the building, there they are. Also, and then on storage-wise as well, we use LucidLink an awful lot. So a lot of our customers will look at LucidLink as more of a shared media to be able to share or deliver from the MAM system, find the content, deliver to the production. Shared storage through LucidLink, and then of course the folks mounting to that. So kind of looking at all the different steps here. Jim was talking about like live streams and so on. So within our MAM system, we actually have the ability to watch a live stream, log that live stream, edit that live stream while it's coming in. We'll create a growing file from that. Typically, most will just have non-technical editors being able to go in and cut the content, find what's needed, put together packages. We can actually do rough cut edits and hard cuts and so on within the MAM system and then deliver those. But we have several different clients, so sports, TV production, studio production recordings, even government. One of our largest customers is OLA up in Canada. They actually have about 16 channels they record. Store the content, but they actually log the content, and then each of the 16 parties up in Canada, so or something like that, each of the representatives from each of the parties are actually able to look into the MAM system and then cut each of the politicians and take them out of context and put their own little hard cuts together and so on. So it's quite interesting on that. We've also got situations where we have people who are remote. So they have a shoot in Australia, but then the content needs to get up to the cloud or get up to a facility here in LA, New York, wherever it's going to be edited. So we do have applications that help that process. We also use accelerated programs as well. If you haven't quite figured it out, if you look at our website, you'll see that we have 90+ integrations with a lot of different companies. So we're not the end-to-end solution, but we can piece it all together to become that. end-to-end solution. We do a lot of integration also with third-party type products to bring in other metadata. One was using scoreboard information for sports and then bringing that in and logging the media in an easy way. So through the XML, being able to then pick up that metadata, we map it with our metadata structure that's inside, which is all customized by you. So you can kind of decide what that custom metadata looks like. So through APIs and so on, a lot of folks also will use APIs to actually access media, traffic systems, automation, being able to pull from our system and then be able to pull out the elements that they need and obviously put into the rundown and then ship off. We also have a lot of integration with news systems as well. So we manage, one of our largest ones is in Bangkok. I was just there this year or last year. And they have, obviously, it looks like a Dell house, but it's all Dell, and then storage, and then eMAM running the complete news system with their news automation and so on. So they're doing rundowns and stories and so on, but all the production is all done through the eMAM system as well. And then that cloud upload, those of us that can afford it to upload our full content or just proxies. Most do today, most of our clients are just doing MES copies up. And then, or just simple proxies for sharing and so on, which, by the way, you can actually share your own or create your own quality of proxy and MES copy. So through our system and through transcoders, we do that as well. So again, they can upload to the cloud and push off to the cloud as well. So on the system, we do support, again, all the organizational structure. Most of our clients come in with a camera card or with full structure of a show. So all the elements, box art, down to caption files and various things in a folder structure, they upload it into the MAM system, and then we build out then that category structure for you to then and assign then all that media to art, to the editors and so on. And then they're able to access only certain parts of that through the category structure and permission levels. And then start doing their production and working on episodics and various things as well. So, and then on the production side, we do support the DaVinci and the Adobe Suite as far as like the production files and so on. We typically are a repository and an archive, so like with SpectraLogic and Black Pearl and things like that. So we actually store like all the project files and all the media for our clients and so on. So at any one point in time, they could just call back a show and then be able to edit that show exactly how it was the moment they left it and put it off into archive. So what's key also, we'll talk about archive, is you can pretty much put it anywhere and store it anywhere. We're really, really flexible on where things are stored and how they're stored. So on the creative side, most of the Adobe Suite and then DaVinci and then Final Cut 10, if you're using that, you have a panel. So they're using the panel to go in and do their full search, find the content. They can either localize the content. What I have is actually a Lucid Link storage account. So when I download it, I actually put it in Lucid Link. And then I can start editing it, and then others, if they want to work on that same project, they can start cutting as well and have it fully mounted to their system as well through the Lucid Link client software. So it's quite easy to do that and manage all the content and production files there as well. So collaboration, most of our clients will share either internally. They will also share externally. Depending on what levels of permission you give a client, they can actually go in and annotate, draw on the screen, if you want to give them that capability. So, and then time code-based comments, various things. Similar to a Frame.io, not as advanced as a Frame.io, but we're able to then set permissions, do overlays and various things on the content. So if somebody's just previewing the content, we can control that and manage that as well. But quite easy to share then production and so on. And then on the delivery side, with a transcoder, we can pretty much put together any type of package for any type of platform. So we have one of our largest customers in India. They actually do about 300 shows a week through our system, through a TIM and eMAM transcoding. We actually then do full packaging for them. So they'll go in and say, this is for this geo location. They'll go in and actually put caption files they need, what tracks they need, And then we basically can give and pass on any artwork or anything that goes along with that, along with any customized metadata that goes with it for automation as well for playout. And we also do on this delivery is segmentation as well. So if you have a situation in an episodic and you're just creating the segments, you can actually define that within the eMAM system. Just hit a button for delivery, and you know which package you're delivering. It'll go right to automation, deliver that package, deliver the media, deliver the sidecar metadata, and away you go. So we have one of our larger customers, Yes TV up in Canada. They actually run their studio recordings, full production, and then delivery system to automation all through the eMAM system there as well. And then lastly, on the archive side, this kind of covers the gamut. So SpectraLogic, like our friends there, being able to hook up to their LTO library system. We manage then the movement of that data through notifications to, say, Black Pearl. And so we actually go in and we say, hey, here's a whole group of files. You could either do it automated. So if nobody touches any media for 30 days, go ahead and just drop it into archive. And then we actually then communicate with them. They then take all that media, that project files and so on, and then put it off onto the archive system. It's still available. Metadata is still there. So just kind of give you an idea. Any of the metadata searching and so on, you can pretty much find the media. We also do spinning disks. So we have actually packages with Dell that we have for certain packages that they have for storage, and then they're able to then archive directly right to spinning disk and call back. So we have different types of packages on the Dell storage and so on that either high production storage or on the archive as well. And then we also manage all cloud leveled storage as well. So if you're looking at Glacier and Azure and Blob and all that kind of stuff, they have multiple tiered layers. We can control and manage what layer you'd like to move that media to as well. And then again, of course, you can archive that and bring that back. Now, one unique thing about this system is you can manage multiple facilities as well. So we could have a facility here, we could have a facility in Santa Monica, or down in San Diego, or in Singapore. Through our system, we're able to actually manage all those facilities and all the media that's there and make that available to those who have permission to see it. So the idea is that no matter where it is, we had Christian Broadcasting Network, they have 5 locations. And so one of them is actually in Jerusalem, and then they actually can then see, everybody can see the animations or the shows and so on that they have, and then be able to call that back at any one point in time and deliver it somewhere. So again, they have visibility of where things are also in the archive system as well. So what I wanted to show you, I know we don't have a lot of time here, so I wanted to actually go ahead and show you that. Jim was speaking about AI as well. So I'm hoping that shows up there. So on the AI side, we work with a number of the AI systems that are out there where we provide them a link to the media or a proxy. It just depends on the AI system. We work with a number of them and continue to get, at each show, I think 8 or 10 show up every year with some new model of AI for some type of, an AI system that came last time was somebody types in, give me a certain subject and go find all my media inside the eMAM system and then put together a sequence. And so those are the type of things that are kind of coming along in the AI service. But most of our customers actually then, they utilize then the speech to text and then are able to go ahead and either extract out the captions that are built into the signal that's coming in, through baseband or through a stream. We can actually extract those out, put those in as a searchable item, be able to then go in and find exactly where somebody said something about somebody, and then be able to pull that off, and then go ahead and you can create a sequence and various things with that. So, but again, I think to wrap it up with the eMAM system, again, we can manage all types of media. We can manage multiple facilities, multiple archive locations as well. Utilizing the remote, I think we were talking about remote edits and so on. Lucid Link is really key for us on that, where we can actually share that media and place or deliver to Lucid Link and share content through them with remote editors. Teradici and some of the others that are out there and the other technologies that provide that. If the bandwidth is there that Jim was talking about too, you can also work on workstations that are back in LA or back in New York, wherever it might be as well, connecting through remote connections as well. But we allow then that full access to that media, those production files, and we all manage it all through the eMAM system. So, and with that, I think I'll stop and see if there's any questions. All good? Got it out? Okay.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Appreciate it. All right.
You're up. David Funk from Lucid Link. Thank you.
You know what? Gonna do this without the slides. All right. Hi, I'm Dave Leopold. I'm the Director of Strategic Development at Lucid Link, but I come from a post-production background. I spent over 20 years in New York as a television creative, 16 of those years at Viacom, where I was an editor. And while I was there, I really focused a lot on not just the creative craft, but I looked at ways to improve and streamline the creative process. And so I would look for solutions, and I would try and share them throughout the company and share them throughout the industry as much as possible. And it was while I was at Viacom that I found Lucid Link. And honestly, it was a game changer for me. It changed the way that I worked, it changed the way my team worked, it changed the way that we all collaborated. And I was so blown away by the technology that I felt I had to join the company and try and spread the word about it, because I understand the impact that a technology like this can have. So when we first went into the pandemic, first thing that happened was security went out the window. We had business continuity, that was priority. But we had to very quickly figure out how to work remotely. And so Jim and Chuck, you both kind of set me up very nicely for this conversation. When we look at remote workflows, there are a lot of things that are sort of baked into the cake, some concessions that we had to make. So when we look at the cloud, why do we want to move to the cloud? Well, maybe it is to support remote and hybrid workflows. Maybe it's because you need to build a global workforce. Maybe it's because everyone else is moving to the cloud and you don't want to be the last ones there. There's a lot of benefits to the cloud, but anyone who's ever used Dropbox, Box, OneDrive, Google Drive, those types of things, you also know that there's a lot of baggage that comes with the cloud. There were a lot of promises made about what the cloud would be, and we weren't using it to its full capacity. So some of that baggage is every time that, let's say, an editor wants to access their files, their media, each individual user has to download their own clips. So you need to wait for the downloads. They need space on their computer to hold all that media. The second that somebody downloads their own copy and starts working on it, they've just lost sync with their entire team. And, of course, security, again. How do we maintain security? So, well, thank you. Here we go. All right. Okay. Is it up there?
Check.
There we go. All right.
There you go.
All right. So why do you want to move to the cloud? And of course, latency, a lot of the solutions out there, we talked about latency of video signals. So what if? what if you didn't have to wait for your downloads? What if you never ran out of local storage? What if you were always working on the most recent version of everything without having to think about it? If you could collaborate in real time, if you didn't have to change the way that you worked at all? And what if you could reclaim that time that was wasted through all these extra processes and put it towards your creative output? What would your creatives say if you told them they could have an extra day, week, month to work on something? That's what we really try to do at LucidLink, is we try to not only reclaim the time and reallocate it, but give you the flexibility to work the way that you are most comfortable. And so, if you're not familiar with LucidLink, we're a SaaS company that really helps creatives be their most creative. Okay, we allow creatives to access their biggest, most important files immediately with no waiting from anywhere. And we do that because we are a single source of truth in the cloud. So you're not losing sync with any of your team. It has the scale of the cloud, but the simplicity of a local disk. So you're not worrying about running out of space on your server. You're not running out of space on your local machine. And because we look like a local disk, we look that way to your operating system, Mac, Windows, or Linux. We look that way to your applications. And most importantly, we look that way to the creative end user. So you don't need to change a thing about the way that you work. If you've ever worked from a USB drive, that's how you do it. And so because we just look like a local disk, it means that we work with all of your existing tools and workflows. There's really no change. Now, as I said, we become a single source of truth in the cloud. Single source of truth meaning there's only one copy of the file. Everyone is working with the same file. Now, because you're not downloading, because you're not replicating, that means you never lose sync with your team. And all that time that we used to spend downloading, that we just, as I said, it was a concession that we made in order to be able to work from the cloud. We're reclaiming that time and putting it towards creative output. So today, LucidLink has about 59,000 creative end users, about 2,500 enterprise companies, 150 countries around the world, and we manage over 36 petabytes of data. Our largest customer has over 1,000 end users, and they have about 3 petabytes of data, but we're growing by about a petabyte to a petabyte and a half per month. And we really support every single workflow that you can imagine. And the reason for that is the way that we work. Oh, did I lose that slide? I will tell you how we work. So this is our secret sauce. This is what makes us different from everyone else out there. When you take a file, let's say it's a 10 gig file, video file, you want to put it in the cloud. Normally, we use cloud object storage. Normally, one file equals one object. You put the whole file up there. When someone else wants it, they have to pull the whole file down. What we do is we take your file, we break it up into little tiny pieces, blocks, 256 kilobyte blocks. Each one of those blocks is streamed up to the cloud over parallel connections to make it go extra fast. And once it's up in the cloud in what we call a file space, once it's in your LucidLink file space, it's already everywhere. So if you want to access that file, your colleague uploads the file for you, you want to access it, you'll see it pop up on your screen immediately, drag it into your NLE of choice, open it up in a video player. As soon as you hit play, we don't need the whole file all at once to be able to read just a portion. So wherever that playhead is, we're streaming just those blocks on demand and caching them locally. So if you ever need to go back to them, they're already there. So it becomes this seamless, smooth experience of playing things as though it were on a local disk, even though they originate in the cloud. Each one of those blocks is also individually encrypted. So we maintain this incredibly secure system. We call it a zero-knowledge encryption model, where LucidLink can't see your data, Your storage provider can't see your data. Only you can see your data as it is decrypted client side. So whether it's at rest, in flight, or at rest again, fully encrypted. So that's sort of how we work. Now, what can we do with that? This is where I think it gets pretty fun. We've seen a lot of successes with top-tier studios, broadcasters, Emmy winners, Oscar winners. In fact, last year's Oscar for Best Animated Short went to a film called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. They were able to do real-time collaboration for 2 years with 120 creatives in 20 different countries using LucidLink as their storage. And that's how they made that film. But then we take it a step further. We start saying, okay, if we can reclaim time for the individual user, can we reclaim time just that exists out there? So we look at a show like Atlanta, the FX show Atlanta. Their 3rd season, they used LucidLink. They shot in Europe, but they posted in LA. And they played off the time zones. And they reclaimed extra time out of the day because they would shoot in Europe, give the footage to their dailies house, it would be uploaded in Europe, and by the time their assistant editors were coming in LA, the footage was there ready and waiting. There were no delays. And what's great about LucidLink is everything just pops up. And if you have permission to see it, it is immediately available. You can revoke and grant permissions with a click of a button. So if you need to add freelancers, add extra contractors to what you're doing, you can actually hire them and have them start a project all within the same minute. So we are accelerating the time to that first edit, the time to that first frame by an exponential amount. So let's take it one step further. Once we start combining this with other technologies that are out there, we're now developing full workflows, full solutions that were never before possible. And that's where I think it gets really interesting. So we work sometimes with Cinedeck, who has an incredible tool called CineX Tools or CineX Insert. And what this tool does is it is software that will enable you to do a digital insert edit. So an insert edit on a file, the way that we used to do on tape, now you can do it on a file. You have an hour-long show. You need to change 3 seconds in the middle. You export those 3 seconds, and you insert it into the file. You don't need to re-export the whole show. Now, when you combine that with LucidLink, your file exists in LucidLink, you're doing the same insert edit into that file, and as soon as it is updated, just like with everything else, it's already everywhere. So QC comes back and says, hey, there's a problem here, you need to fix this slate. You insert the new slate. If I had it open on a timeline, if I had that clip open on a timeline and I just re-scrubbed, it would be fixed. Now, back in my editing days, I worked on a concert series that was, when it was shot, it was never meant to air. So my Luma levels, my chroma levels were all over the place. I spent 2 weeks with kickbacks from QC, changing a couple frames here, a couple seconds there. It would have taken me less than a day to make all those changes if I hadn't had to re-export every time. And so those are the huge time savings when you talk about anyone who does deliverables, finishing, you name it. Something like that is really, really invaluable. We're working with Highscale right now, who, they enable you to, if you mount it on your camera, you can encode directly into an Avid native format, and those clips will land directly into LucidLink. So you can have Avid native format footage as it's growing in a timeline, and you can start cutting in real time as you're shooting. We're also working with a company like Discover Data, who you can scan all your data because it's connecting to LucidLink, it connects to your full file system. It can see everything, but you can still air gap the access. So only people with permission can actually access the files, but other people can see the file without being able to access and see what the files are. We're really looking at every technology out there and trying to build all new workflows. But it all starts in the cloud, and it's the idea that we're looking for the cloud as promised. We want to be able to use the cloud like it's a local disk, and that will enable us to really propel our creative output beyond anything that we've been able to do before. Any questions? Yeah.
Latency from a cloud to a workstation, are you distributing it across multiple cloud instances?
No. No. And so latency, you don't have latency in the traditional sense because you are working at the block level. Remember, if I hit play, I'm only requesting the blocks that make up the frame that I'm trying to play. So it's 256 kilobyte blocks, 64 parallel channels. So I'm getting 16 megabytes, instantaneously.
So in order to edit using Lucid Link, you only need a 16 meg connection?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah. Although there are ways to mitigate bandwidth issues, but that would be 16 megs in every moment.
Okay.
So depending on what your bit rate is, you might want a stronger connection. We have a mechanism called pinning, which allows you to pre-cache if your connection is really slow. And once those blocks are in your cache, you're accessing them locally. So we've actually had people who had cached some of their data, and they were editing using their phone as a hotspot in the backseat of a car going down the highway. We're really no longer bound by location, proximity, distance, anything like that anymore. There was a question? Yeah.
So how do you deal with contention? You've got two users that want to use the same file. How is that handled?
So if it is non-destructive, if it's two people editing with the same file, there's no hit to performance with multiple people pulling at the same file.
But if they're editing, then one's changing it, does the other one see the changes?
Well, if they're editing, if they're both using the same sequence, then it comes down to the application level. So if you have bin locking or you're doing Adobe Productions, then one has read access, the other doesn't. Otherwise, it's last write wins.
So when you're doing, you said everything's encrypted.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously the native applications that your site have to be decrypted in the clear. Do you just make everything in the clear at that point, decrypt it, or are you doing sequential decryption?
You're only decrypting the blocks that you're using in that moment.
Okay.
So if Premiere or Media Composer or Resolve is requesting those blocks, it gets decrypted before being fed to the application. Yeah. Yeah.
But what about if it's cached locally? It's decrypted in that local cache?
It is fully encrypted AES 256 encryption in the cache. It's only decrypted on demand when you need it.
So the Lucid Link application that's on Adobe Premiere is decrypting it as you're playing the timeline?
Correct.
Huh?
And then re-encrypting it once you're past those frames. And what's great about that is if you need to revoke permission from someone, everything that may be in their cache is fully encrypted. It's junk. They no longer have the keys to decrypt it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
First of all, you just blew my mind, so thank you for doing that.
Sure.
What kind of download speed do you need in order to access these files without having to use the cache, roughly?
It depends what you're doing. HD, 100 should be more than enough.
Okay.
UHD, you're going to want more. I mean, it basically comes down to math. It's physics. We can't break physics, but we like to taunt it.
And then second question is, I get that it's broken down into little bits, but like let's just say in your Resolve, and you just transcribe the audio of a timeline that's like 5 hours long, and then you want to do a keyword search. Like technically, that would be using the entire timeline. So like, how does something like that work?
If it is transcribed, it would be going on the metadata of the The transcription.
Transcription, not
Yeah.
the video. But to make the transcription, would that have to go through?
It would have to read everything.
Would have to read everything?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. But you can also mount Lucid Link on virtual machines if you need something to do some cranking in the background. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
Dave, this is a topological question. On one of your slides, you showed your central, let's say, hub in the North Pole, and the lines out to all the remote sites.
Yes.
Is Lucid Link just in one location, or are you distributed?
No, so we run on top of any S3 object storage or Azure Blob. So when you set up your file space, you get to pick which region you're in. Anything else? Thank you very much.
The
Yeah.
last one, so you said you can pick which region. If you wanted to have redundancy, you can go across multiple regions.
Yes.
And then everything that people are doing, let's say in Europe or the United States, is synchronized? Or is it only synchronized to that region where they're working from? Can you synchronize across cloud regions?
No, not at the moment, but you can do backups and synchronizing in the background. But what's nice is, as you talk about that, one thing to mention is that because everyone is using this one single source of truth, everyone has the same file paths. So there's no relinking. If one person is working on something, someone else opens up the same project, you're on different computers, different places, no relinking. All goes back to the same single source.
But you can use third-party software to go ahead and synchronize between those two locations.
Yeah.
If you wanted to archive that material, though, you'd have to pull out from the link still, right, and then archive off.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. All reads and writes have to go through the client because of how it's broken up and encrypted. Mhm. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You can't go around all the other stuff you talked about, stick to radio, it's half the problem. Thank you. All right, that's Tom Arm from Spectralogic. Come on.
Let me know when that comes up. First, I want to thank Barry for putting this together. Thanks, Barry. Appreciate that. I want to thank Barry for putting this all together. So thank you. Thank you all for showing up tonight. I'm going to be very brief. I've only got a few slides here, and I was asked to talk workflow, so that's what I'm going to talk. I'm going to talk workflow. My name is Todd Arnold. I'm a enterprise sales executive with Spectralogic. I've brought also with me Chris Schroyer, who's my solutions architect. We're both local here in the Southern California area, so you have a voice and a face that we can come out and talk to you directly anytime you want. But I also wanted to really quickly go over who Spectralogic is, and there's probably a few of you out there that may have heard of us, or, I keep forgetting the mic's over here, or just know us as a tape company. So I want to give you a little bit of background. So Spectralogic is over a 40-year-old company founded by our current president and CEO in his dorm room at the University of Colorado in Boulder. Over those 40 years, we stayed private. We're employee-owned, and I think that's very important to know because we can make decisions like this and get out there and deal with customers quickly without having to go through a lot of red tape. And we're not dealing with shareholders quarterly asking us what our revenue looks like this quarter. Although, another fine point, over those 40 years, we've never been a penny in debt either. We are still headquartered in Boulder, Colorado. All of our engineering is in Boulder, Colorado. All of our support is in Boulder, Colorado. However, we do have 10,000 plus installations globally in over 80 countries. And we've been innovating and developing new products for those 40 years. You can see we have 142 patents. And those are all things that customers bring to us and say, we need this, develop it for us. So I'll touch a little bit on what we've been doing lately. We're not just a tape company anymore. For 40 years, we've been known as the tape company, right? And we still do a lot of tape. You'd be surprised how many gigantic tape robots are still sent all over the world. We just shipped the largest data repository in the world to that little particle accelerator out there in CERN, out in Switzerland. And that we just shipped, and before that, the one at Lawrence Livermore Nuclear Laboratory was the largest, and that is no longer because we just moved that one to CERN. So gigantic, enormous freight trains of data. But that's not all we do, right? And for 10 years, we've known that tape's going to evolve, and the need for tape's going to evolve. And so we've developed a lot of products that have to do with storage that's not tape storage, or that is about moving your data and making sure it's automated and able to get to it, and handling that movement of data between things. And that's where we're going to talk about workflow. So really quickly, one of the things that we've been working heavily on and has come in handy for a lot of our customers is an on-prem Glacier. I think that's probably self-explanatory what that is, right? Everybody figure that out. Whether it's on spin-down object disk or whether it's on tape, we can build you a Glacier where it's on-prem and you don't have to worry about dealing with the mothership that some people do. We can prove to you that it's cheaper, and we can prove to you that it's faster. Spectra Digital Archive, that's a non-necessarily a media and entertainment solution, but it's a workflow solution where we manage your content from your primary storage, move it off to secondary storage or deeper storage, and make sure that that content is searchable, recoverable, and easily used from an archive solution. And then, of course, media and entertainment solutions, and that's what I really am here to talk about. I want to thank LucidLink, and I want to thank Chuck at eMAM for doing their presentations first, because you can see on my workflow here, and this is my last slide, people. It's up here. I just want to talk workflow and make this interactive. So there's questions out there. You've got me, you've got my engineer, because I always need a smart guy with me. And basically what SpectraLogic is I like to call us, we're the glue in your workflow. We manage your content when it moves between tiers. You can see, I'm going to start over on the right, all of our archive products. We still do tape. We do a lot of tape. We have S3 object disks with spin-down disk. And one thing I wanted to say earlier, we play well in the sandbox, right? And I know there are things where there's some gray overlap between some of the other companies that are up here talking, but however that little bit of gray overlaps, we still play well, and we're happy to work with those other partners in whatever capacity we can. So I can talk object disk, of course, Tom is going to talk object disk, but we also know that we stay in our lane. We are a tier 2 and deeper archive company. I am not going to compete with an Isilon. That is never going to be something we do. That is never something, we stay in our lane, and we do what we do really well. And that's why we stay in our lane, and we know what our product offerings are. So we have tape, we have object storage spin-down disk, which is on a scale up, not a scale out. So you're not going to get speed out of it, but you're going to get resiliency, you're going to get your content back when you want it, and it spins down, and it is eco-friendly because it's not spinning those disks all the time. We also have a tier 2 style NAS, right? 20 plus petabytes in a single rack of just pure NAS. Again, not going to be screaming fast, not intended to be screaming fast. Project parking, things like that, where you want to offload it off of those quicker tiers and put it somewhere else, that's where we play. Replication of those archives in a second Black Pearl, and Black Pearl is just a name of a platform solution, right? We build off of a Black Pearl solution. So a Black Pearl can be just pure NAS. It can be just object disk. It can be the connector to your tape. And it also is your automation, and it manages all of that content seamlessly without the users knowing where it's coming from and how it got there. They just know, I need this content, and we know where it is, we know where we put it, multiple sites, single site, what have you. And of course, everything we do is S3 compliant. So if part of your content needs to be in the cloud, or you want to deep glacier some of it because you don't want to, you know you're not going to get it back and pay those high egress fees, then we can manage the content in any cloud, multiple clouds, multiple geographic locations. We can do that. I'm going to move from right to left, and on the far right, you can see the partners that are here in this room, and Lucid Link does a great job in managing clients and how they get to and work with their content. eMAM, of course, manages all of that content, right, and gives you that asset management and the ability to move it. And then, of course, Dell brings you all those very high speed, very useful primary storage locations. Well, we are the glue that makes sure the content is in the right place when the users need it. When those clients need it, it's got to go somewhere and it's got to come back. And that's what we do. So Rio Broker, that is a data mover that talks to eMAM, talks to our Black Pearl, and moves that content when the editors are done, say, I'm done, archive this. Rio Broker says, I got it, and I know where it is when you want it back. The next thing I want to talk about is right in the middle of that store cycle. So the eMAM is managed assets, right? But everybody's got a bunch of storage with unmanaged assets on it, right? You've got your camera raws, you've got your dailies, you've got just a ton of unmanaged assets. And that's usually on very expensive spinning disk, right? And that gets full, and people go, I'm running out of room. Do I need to go buy another giant cluster of expensive spinning disk? No, we can go in there, we can analyze that disk, we can find out who's touched it last, when they touched it last, get all that metadata, and then based on policies that you've given it, we can clean all that off, move it to a less expensive tier of disk, and then move it right back when somebody needs it. So that's what a store cycle is for managing unmanaged assets. So Rio Broker managing managed assets, store cycle unmanaged assets, and then where are you going to put it, and it's all agnostic, so it doesn't have to be our storage on the back end. Certainly would like it to be, but we can manage it anywhere you want to put it. And that's really a big overview of what Spectra does and what Spectra is today. And yes, Stephen.
Quick question. So
of course.
If eMAM has done an edit, now they come back in and they want to pull up the edit, so eMAM would reach out to Rio Broker and say, I want these files again, and it will know where they are.
If they archived it through us,
right,
then yes, and the user doesn't even need to know that. The user just says, I want this back. eMAM behind the scenes sends a call to Rio Broker, and we'll grade it from the cloud, we'll get it from a tape, we'll get it from an object disk, and put it right back to where they want it.
Based on policy, we put it back on an Isilon for editing.
Or if they have permission to change that, we can put it anywhere. It doesn't have to go back to where it originally came from. Any other workflow questions?
So the Rio Broker is an appliance that I would buy and have in my facility?
That's software. So you could load it on a VM or a bare metal server, and it would act as the software that does that movement, assign the permissions and policies, and then automate that whole process, do it all behind the scenes. And it can be clustered, so if you've got a large data set that you're moving constantly, then we can add a ton of horsepower to that.
And store cycle is also an application.
Exactly, and it's designed strictly to manage unmanaged assets. So all of those NASs that are just getting full of stuff that you don't know what's on there anymore, we can help make sense of what all that is and move the old stuff off, but make it accessible again. So go into the store cycles GUI and say, I need this back. You can add metadata tags, you can add all kinds of things so you can find that content again, right, and make it easily found. We just go into store cycle and say, I want this, and we'll either leave a stub, an HTML file behind, or we'll move it, delete, and then put it right back. And Stephen, as you asked earlier, it can go anywhere. It doesn't have to go back where it originally came. StoreCycle could put it to a local station if they
So
wanted
it
to.
sounds like Rio Broker and StoreCycle do a lot of the same things. What's the differentiator between them?
So Rio Broker is designed strictly to talk to something a little smarter on the front end, like eMAM.
Okay.
Right? So it's the data mover for eMAM. So eMAM really manages the content until they say, now it's yours. And then Rio Broker is the data mover, and then it puts it based on the policies and permissions that you've put into Rio Broker, right? I need to make, it sends it to Black Pearl, and Black Pearl says, I want 2 copies. I want a copy on tape, I want a copy staying on object disk, or one in the cloud, and it manages those permissions. So all eMAM has to do is say, I want this back. And
You get the call.
we manage it, where it sits, how long it sits, we manage all that in the scenes, behind the scenes. StoreCycle has none of that smart upfront. It's the smart upfront. So it goes in and it will scan that tier of storage and pull all the metadata back from all the files that's on that storage, and then it will make decisions based on policies you've given it that says anything that hasn't been touched in 60 days, I don't want on there anymore. Move it off.
The StoreCycle just looks at the plethora of different kind of storage solutions there and tracks all the rights to the storage.
No, it just mounts a storage, and then it will scan that storage based on policies that you've given it. Scan it every day, scan it once a week, and then it'll only change deltas, right? So it's only going to scan and notice what's been changed or what's new within that tier of storage. And it also knows that, hey, this hasn't been touched in 60 days, and my policy says, I want this off of my primary storage, but put it somewhere where I can get it back.
So the user input to StoreCycle is just policies and procedures?
Policies and
And it
permissions.
sits there
And then it does everything in the background until you want something back, and then you can go into the StoreCycle GUI and say, this is what I want, search for it based on tags you've provided, and then it can either put it back or send it to another designated location. And then one of the other cool things about StoreCycle is we developed what we call HTML files that we leave behind. So rather than a stub, because a stub file doesn't act nice when there's latency involved in getting something from the cloud or getting it off tape. So we'll leave a little HTML file behind where it's the same file name, same extension, .html. And so if the user goes in there and knows the file name he wants and clicks on it and it's not there, the HTML file will pop up. It says this was archived this date by this person, right? Do you want it back? Mm-hmm. If they have permission to get it back, they just click a button and we'll give it back. Do you want it here? Do you want it there? But we'll just give it back. If they don't have permission to move it, especially with cloud stuff, you don't want anybody and everybody having the ability to start downloading stuff from the cloud. It will send an email to a data administrator that says so-and-so wants this back. Can they have it back? Yes or no? Click, and then it moves it to wherever they want to move. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thomas Burns. You prefer Thomas or Tom?
Either's fine. Tom Burns.
Mr. Burns.
Sure.
Good luck.
Thank you. I had to change from Tom to Thomas Burns when I joined Dell because there was another Tom Burns at Dell who was the business leader of a $2 billion networking business. And we got each other's emails. I'd get the ones saying, transversal budget enclosed, and he'd get the ones saying, dude, are you going to the party in Amsterdam? So I had to change.
You should have taken a check though first and then take the change.
Yeah. So I spend a lot of time as the CTO for media and entertainment in Dell's Unstructured Data Solutions Group, which is basically Isilon, PowerScale, and our object store ECS. I spend a lot of time thinking about workflow. Because basically when you buy a chunk of storage, you know, that you're putting together a workflow. You got your Gozindas, you got your Gozadas, you put the two together and that's a workflow. And in the old days, and I go way back to, you know, optochemical media as well as rust-coated plastic, but you didn't have to worry about the workflow because everything was linear and everything was already in a format. It was as if you had already transcoded everything into a mezzanine file. And so your data format was uniform. Nuh-uh, not anymore, right? So thinking about workflow is, when I talk about media and entertainment workflow, we're often talking about data management. And by that I mean simply moving files from a file system, like a normal file system, to an object store and back again. And what we saw from eMAM and from SpectraLogic and from LucidLink is that kind of data management from file to object and back again, that's the center of media and entertainment workflows. Whether it's a 4-person little creative boutique or whether you're doing the Olympics spread out over umpteen time zones. But all of this stuff around Gen AI has been rearing its head lately, as you know. And I realized that they're talking about data management in a totally different way. And so rather than sit here and talk to you about Dell infrastructure, which I can do until the cows come home, and if you want to know any questions, see me afterwards and we'll talk about that. But I'm going to talk about something totally different, and that's this changing definition of data management. It's no longer copying from file to object and from object to file to support a globally creative workflow. Now what we're in is a situation, and how this situation came about was historically because of what they used to call data warehouses. Anybody ever heard of Hadoop, HDFS, analytics kind of workflows? So in the old world, you have to, if you're a data scientist, you have to spend an enormous amount of time doing what they call exchange, transform, and load, ETL. And that means, think of, you got 40 petabytes in your SpectraLogic library. And think about having to transcode every single one of those files to some common mezzanine format before you could even start to work, right? That's why things like Hadoop file system and analytics workflows were invented, because you had to get everything into this kind of clunky box called a data warehouse. Once it was all in there, it was awesome. You could run all these analytics, and that was, it used to, I don't know, we talk about Gen AI as the new AI. What happened to regular AI? Like, there was analytics, then there was machine learning, and now everything is Gen AI, but there's an awful lot of regular AI. Anyway, I'm digressing, and you'll find that I do that a bit. So we know that data scientists have to spend a tremendous amount of time in extract, transform, and load, and so on the large-scale data warehousing world, they're now going to a different concept where instead of having to get everything into a MES file, that's a media and entertainment expression, but in order to get everything structured, or I guess it's better to say semi-structured, you have to do all this work. 70% of the data scientist's time is spent in this ETL phase. So how much better is it? And this is the premise of a company called Starburst. And Starburst says, I'm going to have this thing called a data lakehouse, and it's going to have all of these different heterogeneous data types in there. Some of them are controlled in structured databases. Some of them are keyed on the first column. Some of them are keyed on rows. It's all a mess, but Starburst is this tool that takes, okay, I've got X petabytes in a SpectraLogic library there, and I've got X petabytes on an Isilon scale-out NAS, and I've got X petabytes in public cloud in an object store. I've got a whack in my LucidLink. I've got a whack in Pixit Media. And it just says, instead of having to read them all into some common format, just leave them there. Because, I mean, okay, here's a use case. Think about a university athletics, the creative services group within a university athletics team. And so, if it's like Auburn or Clemson or one of those, they've got like 40 years of football history, and that stuff is gold, right? It's like the Olympics or something. That data is super valuable, and yet the metadata in their tape library from 40 years ago, or even from 4 years ago, they might only have air date, runtime, and show title, right? The metadata is awful. And realistically, there aren't enough interns in the known universe to watch and listen to all of that archived material in order to extend the metadata to make it more searchable and therefore more monetizable. Maybe not in actual dollars, but you know, when somebody who went to Clemson gets promoted into the big leagues, being able to have a clip of the first touchdown that they caught as a school player is pretty cool. But it's only valuable for a couple days in the news cycle, and you got to get it right then, right? So the problem is, I've got 40 petabytes in my tape library, and if I had to do the traditional thing, which is to migrate all of that out of LTO into an object store and have an AI watch and listen to it as it's going along, well, that takes 2 years before you're able to actually get some monetizable, you know, some metadata information out of that. So now we're back to the world of Starburst and this data visualization paradigm that is super important right now for Gen AI. And what tools like Starburst do, and there are tools that do this for tape libraries as well, it basically adds a layer of abstraction. It virtualizes the data layer so that you can have this type of data in that kind of database and somebody over here in some weird ball non-standard thing and some cloud stuff that nobody knows what it is, but we have to watch it so that we can decide whether to throw it away. By moving the abstraction one layer up, and you know, Starburst does this thing where they write a connector to a tape library, and they write a connector to a NAS, and they write a connector to a, you know, whatever, a MySQL database, all kinds of connectors they have. And that way, me as the data analyst, I don't have to spend all that time in ETL anymore. I just put out one query to the Starburst thing. It figures out formats and moves on that query and returns my thing in a standard format so that I don't have to migrate all my weird dissimilar, because we're media and entertainment. It's always been about best of breed, right? You're never going to have everything tied up in one thing. Well, maybe you do at the start, and then as you grow and migrate over the years, then you get all these different things. And so leaving things where they are, raising the visualization level for your data management. So now this is the point that I hope to leave you all with, is that the term data management has changed because of these AI guys that are stomping all over our well-defined workflows. But really, this is the cool thing too. Media and entertainment people are in a much better place to understand the import of this data visualization conversation because we're already used to using media asset management, whether it's eMAM, whether it's using the file system, you know, file and folder naming conventions as a quick and dirty MAM. We've all been there. You don't tell me you haven't. And so, because media and entertainment people understand data visualization, or virtualization, I guess I should call it, and we're used to using media asset management tools, we are all in a much better sense than, say, these life sciences guys. And, well, oh my goodness, sometimes I get jealous of the life sciences guys. They don't even get out of bed for less than a petabyte. And they have the same kind of problems, right? The X-ray images are different from stained slides that they use for cancer diagnoses, which are different from the X-ray diffraction crystallography that's used for genomic sequencing. It's so weird. These $25 million things that do genomic sequencing, they're called cameras. Because literally, it's a photographic, it's an X-ray photographic process that provides the picture of the human genome that they then analyze with AI techniques. But my point is, they've got a ton of dissimilar image types, like us. They've got a ton of different storage silos, like us, and they need some way for the AI to look at all of that different imagery without having to spend 2 years in that extract, transform, and load process and putting it into a format so that the analytics or the AI can just chew through it nicely. The reason I'm blathering on about this is because we all, in this room, we understand workflow very, very well. We've been doing it from a little 4-person creative boutique up to, you know, the hugest of globe-spanning workflows. And we are uniquely poised to take advantage of this data virtualization and one level up abstraction that is coming our way, because as these techniques get known to the technological community because of Gen AI, so buzzy, then things will gradually filter them down to us. And I just have to get to my notes here because I want to make sure. The main points I want to leave you with are creating a data pipeline in the Gen AI sense is much more difficult if you're not used to media asset management and data virtualization. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with, it doesn't really matter whether you use ChatGPT, whether you use Gemini, whether you use Bing, Stanley, or whether you call up my Aunt Bubby and ask her. The data quality turns out to be way more important than your choice of LLMs. So this is a way that we can all start to think about data quality, and by virtualizing it up above the individual infrastructure chunks that we've bought and purchased and implemented over the years, then we get this worldwide working data visualization system, which one day will be the goal that came from the LucidLink person, the metadata-driven file system. And that's where we're headed. Thank you. Oh, yeah, questions. Questions, please.
But first,
Stephen.
okay. So you talk about this abstraction layer, which becomes then a homogeneous data lake, which everybody can then access and query.
Yes.
But if that data, AI video tagging is not there, then it can't do it. You still have to go through and video tag things.
Yes. And the AI is a lot faster at tagging humongous amounts of material than humans are, because we are restricted to the linear form of the media. We have to watch it in real time.
I have a question. In that sports example you gave,
Yes.
I thought immediately of indirect addressing. Okay, you have the tape, but you also have the stats for the game.
Yep.
So you can find out exactly when in a quarter that guy who went to the NFL can get his highlight. Okay, but you can use, once you know that, you can have AI go through the tape and pick it out.
I don't even think you need AI to do that. That's a very normal database query and join. If you have two timelines, one with the stats, if you know that something happened, the guy caught the interception at blah blah time marker, then you just go to blah blah time marker and you start there. But I'm talking about more of the stuff that needs somebody to interpret, Those are the kind of things that are monetizable. Yes?
So just to point that way, I mean, we've been talking about rich media forever, which is really about getting the information there. But so to your point that way, there's software out there already that works on, and some of the people here know me, I've worked with it, with a manufacturer that way, where you could say I missed the game on Sunday, and you really wanted to see it, where you can go back and there'll be services for that, and say, I want to see all the touchdowns, field goals,
Automated highlight reels.
yards, interceptions, and sacks, and I only have 9 minutes. Make me a game, and they can do it. It'll come pretty close to 9 minutes, maybe just slightly over or under. But because we've taught it all that way, and because it was all tagged going in, it's all there for you. I've tried to get to people forever and saying, why don't you just do this? It's a source of revenue. I think people would love to be able to see highlights, all week long.
Yep.
But
NFL Networks is down by SoFi.
yeah, we've been in NFL, and I've been through NBA, and I mean, people look. I've been actually at some of the studios, because you get shows that are, get cult followings, like The Bachelor, and you have 90 hours, 60 hours to 1, and then you do 13 episodes. You got a few hours there of data, so you can go back and I always thought they'd do it as a service, because they end up with the churn on subscriptions, which is the really ugly word. Just give it to them for free. You already own all the footage. Let them see what Bob and Barbara were doing, behind the scenes. It never made the show. It doesn't cost them anything.
Cool.
Anyway.
So is Starburst, is that Dell software?
Nope. We have a deal with them, but they're a third party. They were actually developed inside of Facebook, and then they were spun out to open source, and then somebody bought them, and it's a long, crazy thing. But the whole point, and you know, there's other tools. Versity is one that sits over top of a tape library and gives you basically random access to that tape library without having to migrate all of the data beforehand. So there's lots of things that work on a similar, like in the media and entertainment world, that work on a similar principle to this Starburst. But if you go Google Starburst, you'll see that this whole data management, or creating a data pipeline, is often what the AI people call it. And when you have all this training data locked up in all these different silos, and you want to do a quick tweak or a fine tuning, a customization of your large language model, then you don't want to spend 2 weeks getting all the training data in the same format and in the same place. You just want to be able to say, take it from there, not there, run me a fine tweak, and then let's see how my inferencing is coming out of my model. Oh, it's working good now? Okay, we'll leave it until the next couple weeks when it needs fine tuning again. But that's the key. We've all sat there and waited for the file copy bar to be finished for most of our careers. I am so sick of waiting for the file copy bar. I never, ever, ever want to do that again. And that's why I think this whole thing about media and entertainment people are uniquely poised to understand the benefits of data virtualization because we work with MAMs.
Thank you.
Okay.
We had the right Tom Burns.
Yes.
Okay, Mark Zorn. And we're finishing up.
Oh, okay.
No, you're our last speaker, so it's all yours now.
I'll try to be brief, but
No?
I get the fun part.
You do cleanup.
I'll do cleanup. Fear. Thank you. Good night. I basically wear two hats. My day job, I'm head of content protection for Marvel Studios, and a lot of times my job is to discourage people from playing with the new toy. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from the security part of what I'm saying, make sure you define the problem you're trying to solve before you invest in the new technology. Because clearly, blockchain isn't going to fix everything. We've been talking about it for a while. The fear that we experienced recently from the strikes of the writer strike and the actor strike, the fear about AI. AI has been around for a long time. I mean, I studied it in school 30 years ago, and it's not suddenly going to take over the world. So what we want to do is, before we invest in a technology, we need to make sure we define the problem. And then we ask the questions, does it solve the problem? Is it doing what I think it's doing? And then, do you trust it? I'm a security guy. Do you trust it? That's the point of my realm. So if there's anything you want to take away from security, those three questions. So the common thread tonight has been where do all these different technologies intersect? And the other hat that I wear is the chair of SIMT Hollywood. So what I think is important to know is the way that you tie all of these things together is by crowdsourcing, by talking to people that are doing the same things you're doing, that are trying to solve the same problems, they're looking at the same technologies, that are trying to answer the question, does this solve my problem? So what I want to do is make a pitch for SIMT. They've been around for, 107 years, 108 years, a long time. And there are kind of three major principles of SIMT, which is education, standards, and membership. And the standards are, hey, is everybody trying to do the same thing? How do we make sure that it's done consistently? Education is obviously spreading the word. My favorite part about the whole thing is actually membership. Not from a financial point of view, but in people networking with each other. That's where I think the biggest value comes from. I was talking to a student, there you are. I was talking to Rob earlier and trying to encourage him to join SMPTE or at least network with various groups like SMPTE, because that's going to enable understanding of the technologies, talking to people that will help you learn the new stuff, define the problems, and it'll also get you a job. Because the more that you interact with people, the more they'll understand what you're good at, what you're not good at, and they'll be thinking about you when they're going to hire you. So with that all said, how many people in here are members of SMPTE? Yeah, all right, a better question. Who's not a member of SMPTE? Okay, so I'm talking to you guys. All right. I highly encourage you to join SMPTE for the obvious reasons. The other thing is that when I was saying it will help you get a job, if you're not currently working, SMPTE has a great deal where they will allow you to join for half price. That's pretty cool. If you're a student, you get your first year for free. So it's trying to take the money aspect out of the equation so that you can get to the good stuff. One of the things that SMPTE is trying to do is make it more of a global organization. I mean, it is a global organization, but we have a tendency to think of our local section as being the world for SMPTE. SMPTE Hollywood happens to be the biggest and strongest chapter, so you're in good company here, but SMPTE is trying very hard to make it so that all the sections are talking to each other. We're doing collaboration on a new scale. One of the biggest benefits that they have recently changed is if you're a member of SMPTE, you get direct access to the entire standards library, where you used to have to pay an extra amount to get to it, and that is huge. Any little standard over the last 107 years, now you can look it up. Now, of course, you need to store it in the cloud and then have a search mechanism, maybe AI to find them, but you know, they're there. That's a big benefit. So with that, thank you.
Anybody want to join now? He's here.
Yep, I'll get you the discount code.
I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. This was great. We had our speakers who volunteered their time to come in and spend time with us tonight. We rolled right through this tonight, and I'm grateful and appreciative for all the speakers who gave us their time and shared their knowledge that way. Thanks for coming out tonight, and we have some time. There's still a lot of food around. There's drinks out back, so spend some time networking, as Mark mentioned, and we'll see you again. Bye-bye.